Hi.
Great. Okay. Welcome all who are online and in person. This is the Tuesday, December 13th Ross ADR meeting. My name is Mark Kruchnit. I'm an ADR member. I'll quickly let the ADR members introduce themselves so you know who you're speaking to as you present your projects tonight.
I'm Steven Sutro.
I'm Joey Buckingham. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, Joey. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Hi, Laura. We just introduced ourselves, so if you unmute yourself, you can introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Laura Dewar. I'm an ADR member. Thanks.
Great. And we have one more ADR member, Mark Fritz, who will be joining us in the next moment or two. The first thing I do after I call the meeting to order here is we open for public expression. If someone has anything they want to talk about not related to an agenda item, you have up to 3 minutes to speak about it. If anyone online wants to raise their hand or anyone in the audience, now's your chance. Okay. The first item is the approval of the minutes from November 15th. I was present at that meeting and have read through the minutes and they seem fine to me. Does someone want to second their approval who's read them?
I can second that.
Thank you, Laura.
Yes.
And the first planning project, oh, and just to let people know, we only have one project tonight other than the Ross Common. The way we do it is the town introduces a project, then the homeowner and or their design team gives a lengthier explanation of the project, during which time the ADR members can ask questions. Once that's done, I open it up to the public who might want to comment and or ask questions. After that, I bring it back to the ADR so we can formulate our recommendations to the town council. And the next agenda item, number 4, is Ross Common Park. I will let Rebecca introduce that item.
Thank you. Tonight on Zoom, we have Richard Simonich, Director of Public Works, who will be giving the presentation. And Rich, you are a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen if you need to.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca, and good evening, members of the Ross Advisory Design Review Group. Tonight, staff is looking for a recommendation from ADR on a selection of a design for the park benches on Ross Common, consistent with the Ross Common Landscape Improvement and Rehabilitation Plan that was adopted by the town council in December of last year. So this item will not go back to town council because it was vetted through that December 9th, 2021 meeting. So in the packet we provided some examples of what we feel are benches that are consistent with the recommendations of the Ross Common Landscape Improvement Plan. And we also included a site plan of the preferred landscape plan showing the location of the 3 benches that we're going to be installing in the immediate future. 2 of which are replacing the 2 very old and dilapidated benches there on the pathway in the Ross Common Grove. And then we're going to be adding a new bench in the Grove as well. And if you need me to bring up the plan and point out some of the items, I can do that. The plan, again, is part of your packet. And hopefully that's pretty explanatory. So with that, if you have any questions, I am here and we can pass it back to the ADR. This is my first ADR meeting, so I'm not entirely certain how the process goes, but that does conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. If you could use the screen share to put up the benches and the different variations that we should be looking at and opining on.
Okay. Let's see. So let me just scroll down here. And let me, yeah, okay. So, yeah, so these are some of the examples. This is a mahogany wooden bench, 48 inches wide, and staff has recommended we kind of stay with the 48-inch wide benches. Here's another design consistent with the plan. It's wood and steel frame construction. This is called the, I guess it's just the outdoor park bench, steel and wood, brown and black. And this is a similar design, a classic white oak park bench. And a lighter colored all wood bench. And then these are some I included because they actually were made from recycled plastic milk containers. And I thought that might be something that ADR group would consider as something that's environmentally friendly and sustainable. This is the same kind of plastic milk container type design as well. Now, by no means do we need to stick with these particular designs. If you guys have a design in mind that you want to run with, we'd be happy to take a look at that as well. But hoping to get at least an idea of what style would be favorable to the ADR. And so then I'm going to go down to the plan actually. So let's see if I can move this around here. So these are if you can see my cursor there, we got these two are and I'm calling them dilapidated because they are past their useful life, these two benches here. So we're going to add another one here in the Grove area. And I did highlight on this plan the location of the 5 existing benches that have memorial plaques to probably the person who donated the money to install these benches. And they are also reaching the end of their usable life as well. I think within 3 to 5 years, they should be replaced, preferably with the design that we will hopefully walk away with tonight. And then we're going to add one new bench here. This is kind of in the future. Again, the immediate area we're looking at is the Grove area back over here to the right. But we would, in the future, add another bench here consistent with the approved landscape plan. And then down here, we have a little, we're calling the post office green, a kind of a plaza area that we still have a little bit of work to do to come up with exactly what that's going to look like. But council agreed on adding 2 new benches in this area. So while I have this up, then if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer that.
Richard, I have a question that might be for you or could be answered maybe by someone else. And it's really just about the longevity of the benches. You know, as you point out, there are some that currently need to be replaced because of weather, and there are others that will. And usually when you see these kind of benches, they look great when they go in, and they gradually get more and more worn. And usually when they're about 2 or 3 years past when they should be replaced is when they get replaced. So it just seems that we'd be better off, regardless of which design people choose tonight, in trying to find the material that would last the longest and the best.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I noticed that 2/3 of them or so had metal legs and armrests, which might be better just for longevity. And I'm not sure how the wood compares to the recycled, I think it was plastic milk crate.
Plastic milk cartons, yeah.
I would almost think that if that's a kind of plastic, it could last a long time, or maybe it doesn't last very long at all. I have no idea. So it would be great if we had some information on longevity. So when the ADR members but choose a general style, we can then get the ones that last the longest,
Mm-hmm.
assuming they're not exponentially more expensive.
Right. I think they're all of the designs that I've chosen are within a reasonable budget that we're looking at for this project.
What is that budget? What are you looking at per bench, if you don't mind me asking?
Joey, you're really quiet. We can sort of barely hear you.
Oh, really?
Speaker.
Oh, huh. What is the budget for each bench?
I would have to look at my capital improvement program, which I don't have in front of me, but for just the bench replacement, I would say, $1,200 per bench is about the top end of it.
Okay.
But I don't think we need to consider cost too much this evening. I'd like just to get an idea of the style we're looking for. But yeah, $1,200, that's a lot of money for just a single bench. So that's probably way up in the high end.
That's about right.
Can I ask, do all of those styles, like the ones that have plaques on them now, would those be put onto the new benches as well?
Do you mean would the plaques be placed onto the new benches?
Would there be plaques added onto the new benches, and do all of those benches you propose support that?
So staff doesn't recommend doing the plaques anymore. We're not really asking for donations from anybody.
Okay.
We're funding this from our capital improvement program, or our facilities plan.
Thanks.
Hey, Richard, quick question. You said you recommended 4-foot benches. I believe the ones that are currently that you're replacing in the Grove are probably closer to 6 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
4 feet seemed to me to be kind of tight. I was just curious why that was a recommendation.
Just really so that people won't be taking naps on them, really, and so that they're really just for sitting and not for people to be lying down on per se. So that was kind of our concern. It's just to discourage or encourage just sitting on the benches, but that's not hard and fast. 48 inches mark, I do agree, is a little bit tight, but we've got a little wiggle room to move around on that.
Okay. Yeah, my recommend. I think most of those that are even existing that off to the left of our drawing here are probably 5-foot benches, is my guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the ones that are more slabs are probably closer to 6 foot in the Grove.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend. I see your point. I don't think we have that particular problem in Ross, but maybe I don't know about it. But I would go for something a little bit wider to give 2 people comfort, space.
Mm-hmm. We can consider that. Yes.
Okay.
So are we going to go for individual feedback and recommendations on this?
Yeah. So, hopefully you have had a chance to take a look. So,
why don't we scroll through them and people can sort of do a thumbs up or thumbs down on each one?
Yeah, that we could do that. So this is an all wood design, if we wanted to go with that. And actually the recommendation in the improvement plan was to stay with wood. That's something that the council wanted to do. So that's a darker wood. This is
interrupt for 1 second.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
please.
Should we open the public hearing in case anybody from the public wants to
sorry.
comment?
Does someone have questions or
Thank
comments?
you.
Please. Could you step up to the microphone so everyone can hear you?
Don't know me. So people that know me will laugh. My name's Diane Redden, and I'm a member of the Age Friendly Group, which was the ones that brought this forward to begin with. So the only thing I want to make sure is that the bench doesn't sit back like this, that it's flat, because as you get older, it gets harder to come from this position than this position.
Okay, no, that's an excellent point. Thank you.
Okay, and the other thing is, and this is a personal thing, is I would like to, since I've been involved with the Medical Reserve Corps and all this other stuff and fires and that, is try to get something that is not going to, but you know, that, I know they're talking about making it look the same in wood and that, but that's my personal opinion, is I would like to see more metal, so that's it.
Okay, but I do think if the entire Ross Common is on fire and the whole
There's
thing,
no
and the
hope in
grass
that.
is burning and the
Well,
trees are burning and the
I know,
school's
I know,
burnt
but,
down,
you know,
I
there's
don't think anyone
also
wants to
that-
sit on the
that
bench
cigarette
anyway.
that falls down. Anyway, I hope that they could sell those two lovely benches that are there now, because they've been, I moved in '85 and they were there then, so they have been there forever. The ones on the rocks, the pieces of wood on the rocks, so.
Okay,
And I think if you do get rid of the plaques, you need to put them someplace, because there were people that lived in this town for a long time that are remembered by what's on the back of the benches. If you don't want to put them on the benches, that's fine, but I think we need to think of a way to recognize the people that did live in town and put a bench in.
thank you. Does anyone else at home or in the audience have a comment or question? Okay, so maybe we should just quickly go around with the ADR members, thumbs up, thumbs down on each of these designs. Stephen, you're here. Thumbs up or thumbs down on the first one?
Should,
Does anyone else like this one?
maybe we should do general comments from each ADR member on the style of benches in general.
I'm sorry, say that again, Joey?
Maybe we should do general comments on the style of the benches from each ADR member instead of like voting thumbs up or thumbs down on just each bench that Richard has chosen. Kind of like maybe how we would see those benches style wise. Just an idea.
I agree with Joey on that one. I think we can zero in on the variety of materials here and the color and format, and then to some degree we can give really clear guidelines to Richard to say, yep, it's got to be this, it should be that, it should have arms, it should be, that would be my recommendation as well, Joey.
Okay. Well, Mark, why don't you start on this one then?
Well, sure. So I think I recognize the need to be durable. I do think that all wood is probably in keeping with the themes of town and certainly the location within the Grove. I think there is the teak version here that's a little more substantive in scale. I think, yeah, it says that one there. I think whatever goes in needs to be relatively, I wouldn't say chunky. I think this calls it, extra thick. But I would say it needs to be durable. That first one was too dainty. These will get a lot of use. I think dogs hop up here, bikers lean bikes against them. So I think the more substantive a wood bench would be better. So that one that you've highlighted down there, the more substantive wood one is something I would think is appropriate. The metal and wood seem to be a little too dainty, in my just personal opinion, for the context of where they're going. They just seem too delicate from a design standpoint. I like the idea of recycled materials, but maybe something in recycled wood would serve a similar purpose. And again, I made my comment about the width. I think they should be, 5 feet at minimum, just so you can get 2 people comfortable on a bench. So those are my comments. I think all wood is probably preferable due to the substantive nature of the material.
Sorry, I have a question for Richard. Is the Anderson Teak, is that the place down in Sausalito near where the seaplanes are?
I'm not really sure, and where they actually produce these.
Because there is a place that's down next to the seaplanes that has teak furniture that looks very similar to that. And we have those in our yard, and they do not wear that well. And ours are like 6 to 8 years old, and they look pretty shoddy at this point. And that's after like doing stuff every couple years to sort of refurbish them, and they require some work, the teak, in this climate, because it's not as moist as where teak is from. So it cracks and dries, and I think those arms would end up looking pretty old within a few years. Just our experience owning what I believe are Anderson teak, we might have that exact same bench in our yard.
I would say one other comment, Mark, that I did hear from some folks is having arms is pretty important. That the benches there today do not have arms. Everyone you've shown us today has arms, so I think that's just something to continue that theme on.
Oh, I agree with you. I think it's best to have arms, without a doubt. I'm just saying, if it's this particular one, the one I have, it doesn't wear that well.
Totally
Yeah,
understand. Yep.
I was, in my comments, was going to say something similar. Can I go?
Go ahead, Joey.
So I agree with Mark Fritz. I feel like the ones with metal have a little bit too much kind of Victoriana going on. They look a little Victorian and also a little too dainty, especially juxtaposed with the design of the school, which I think is just has a little more of a modern vibe. I also agree with Mark Krichnet that the teak, I have very similar stuff in my yard and it's worn terribly. It looks awful despite all of my interventions. So I really suggest that we look at something that's kind of bulletproof. There's a company called LOLL, LOLL, that has recycled material outdoor furniture that really wears quite well. It's just something to think about. And those are my biggest opinions here, that the teak doesn't wear well and that the ones with the curly Q metal just seem a little dainty for the environment. That's it.
Laura, would you like to give your overall impressions of the
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think between the two all wood benches, the last option, the teak one, looks more the style of the current benches. So maybe if you find something like that in a different material that's more durable and requires less maintenance, that could be a good option. Yeah, the metal benches were the ones with the metal legs were kind of interesting. But I think sticking with the wood options is gives more of the rustic aesthetic that you guys were going for. So
Okay, thank you. Do you want to do like an overall?
No, I agree with what everyone else has said. I would also just add that probably paint is not a good idea, that stain is better. That's all.
Okay, so it seems everybody sort of agrees that this is the best looking one as far as overall, as far as the more, sorry, say again? Chunky, solid, 100% wood, or some other product that looks like wood. Something that lasts a long time is key. Probably 5 feet is better than 4 as far as just comfort and space. And something that's flat as far as the actual seating surface is concerned, which I think on most of the wood ones you're gonna get, as opposed to sloped. Joey, would you mind looking up one of those ones that you mentioned and just sending that to Rebecca or Richard?
Yes, I could do that. If you don't mind, I'll just send to Rebecca and Richard some of the ones I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Because I've sourced them for clients before and they've been quite happy with them, and they're just bulletproof.
Great.
And I know they use them in a lot of commercial applications, so it might be something worth checking into.
That would be appreciated, yes.
Okay, I will do that.
Maybe you could copy me on that too, since I'm going to need to replace the teak ones at some point because they are looking pretty poor.
Guess what? Me too.
Maybe we can get a group deal.
Exactly.
Thank you. Okay, so now we will move on to the next item.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And the next item is 160 Lagunitas. And Stephen Sutro is going to recuse himself from this one and be one of the presenters. So we will let Rebecca introduce the project before Stephen and the owners continue.
Good evening, Chair Kirschnet and ADR members. The applicant requests approval of demolition, design review, and a variance to construct a single-family residence essentially on the same location as the existing home. The project proposes to construct a new 6,233 square foot, two-story single-family residence and a 394 square foot matching detached garage. The proposed project will have a natural palette of materials and the windows and doors will be deeply recessed. The applicant is also proposing a vehicular and pedestrian gate located on the south side of the property. The gate will match the palette of the structure on the property. All fencing along Lagunitas Road will be buffered with a layer of vegetation. New landscape, a swimming pool, and hardscape are proposed throughout the property. The variance is needed to construct a new pool within the side yard setback. Staff requests that the ADR group discusses the merits of the project and provide a formal recommendation to the town council. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Stephen Sutro. I'm the designer for the project, and Melissa Rohde is here in the audience if anyone wants to ask any questions of her, but I'll be presenting the project to you. The first thing I want to say is that Melissa and AJ, her husband, the homeowners, they really wanted to create something here that would feel traditional and that would blend into the historic context of Ross. So that was really important to them, that the house feel like it was always there in a way. So I'm going to walk you through just a couple things about the lot that led us to position it the way that it's proposed. And then I'll go through some of the design features quickly, some of the materials and details. And then finally, I'll ask Eric Blazin, who's here with us, to present a few details about the landscape and the fence and gate at the front. The current house is non-conforming in that it protrudes beyond both side setbacks. And a primary goal of the design of the house, because we were proposing a new house, was to make it conform in all respects. So the house as it's designed conforms to all mathematic Ross code, and it conforms, we think, also to the design guidelines. So it corrects the nonconformities of the existing house, and everything about the house conforms as far as we can tell, and as far as staff has helped us determine. And so the variance that is sought is only for the pool, and we'll talk about that at the last, and then maybe Eric can add a little bit of color for that too. So you can tell that this is great. This is a great slide for now, Alex. Thank you. So you can tell that the lot is a bow tie shape. It's got a certain width at the front, and then it narrows very much towards the middle of the lot. And one of the most prominent features, other than that shape, is the large oak tree that's in the center of the yard. And the oak tree is beautiful. It's enormous and sculptural and really fantastic. And from what we can tell, it was there quite a bit before the house was built. The house that stands there was built in approximately 1950 and was built also around that oak tree, or behind the oak tree, as it were. So when we tried to figure out where we should place this, the design, we thought momentarily about taking the oak down, and Melissa said no. And then we thought about putting it in front of the oak tree, but it placed the house really close to the street, and that the lot is long and didn't seem to take advantage of having so much length of lot. So what we settled on was putting the house in the same position as the existing The rectangle of the house, the primary rectangle of the house, occupies almost the exact same footprint. The southern line, south is to the left in the diagram. The southern line doesn't move, and you can see that in the story poles if you visited the site. Also prominent about the existing configuration is the carport and garage that stands in front of the house, and that occupies a bunch of space that seemed to be kind of a shame on the lot. So once we decided where the house should go, we tried to figure out what was best for the garage. And one of the more remarkable features about the design is the choice to detach the garage. Because we're kind of at the pinchiest point of the lot, we're limited in how much on the west facade, which is, the south facade, which is the front, actually can stretch out. We're constrained by the side setbacks. And we considered a design that had the garage doors on the front of that house, and it seemed a shame to take away from the prettiness of a facade with 20 feet of garage. And also, when we were doing schematic planning, we found it unfortunate to take away from the south light on that facade with a bank of garage doors. We also briefly considered running a ramp. The existing driveway is approximately in the same location. It shifted a little bit, or it's mostly in the same location. And we thought about ramping it down as it went, so that you would turn 90 degrees into a garage under the house. And it just seemed to be too much grading and would result in an unnatural kind of intervention into the landscape. We didn't want those retaining walls that would result. It just didn't seem like a house that was built in 1900, which is our goal, would have such a thing. And so we settled on a garage towards the front as kind of like a gatekeeper's house, kind of little kind of folly building. It's totally within the buildable area of the lot. And this kind of structure is seen on a couple houses up and down Lagunitas. One 2 doors down up the road has this kind of feature, and it's mostly hidden by bushes, and you really don't see it at that house. But when you do catch a glimpse of the roof and the form of the house, it's kind of I think a pretty way of introducing the architecture of the house. So, the narrowness of the lot and kind of how we found that we had to position this led to that decision, which we quite like. Anyway, so that's an explanation of how we ended up there. Let's see. Obviously, the design of the house is very traditional. We looked at examples from early Bay Area traditions and also from kind of English country side architecture, not in kind of too much of a decorative way, obviously. There's not a lot of carved decoration or curvy moldings, but we wanted it to feel old and kind of chewy. And so we settled on a palette of stone. The stone is meant to have mortar that goops beyond the joints of the stone, and kind of, it's called over mortaring. It's kind of smeared on the surface of the stone and then removed a little bit so that it looks time worn by rain and stuff like that. And so it probably will be slightly erratic in terms of color too, and kind of whatever we can do to make it look old. And having a stone facade is neat because it makes us have a thick exterior wall. We lose a little bit of usable space, but allows us to have deeply set windows where they be set in the stone. And then to give relief or variation in terms of the materiality, we have the front, the structure that stands, the single story structure is clad in painted wood. And there is painted wood on the series of dormers that are on the roof line. We wanted a fairly steep roof line to fit with the tradition, but we have a 30-foot height limit. And the way that the topography slopes away towards the back of the lot means that we can't have a 30-foot high house that sits kind of in the yard. Well, we're kind of punished by the way that the topography goes down the hill. And so we tried to we made the roof steep and used this system of dormers so that the second story looks somewhat nestled into the roof line. Let's see. Thanks, Alex. The front automobile gate, pedestrian gate, Eric can talk a little bit more about. We have a little bit of the stone in a series of bollards surrounding the gates, and then There would be some planting between that and the garage structure, but we're kind of ghosting that so you can see the garage. I think when the planting matures, you won't see the garage structure at all between those two planes. On the right is a view of the mudroom entrance and the single-story wood-clad structure. Finally, I'll talk a little bit about the pool. The pool in its existing position non-conforms quite a bit, both in the rear and side setback. And so we looked at putting it in the front yard. We can't put it in the root zone of the large mature oak, of course, so it could be kind of quite close to Lagunitas, but from a noise perspective, both kind of projecting noise out to the street and back to the pool, it didn't seem to be ideal. It also doesn't seem to be ideal to put a swimming pool in front of a traditional house. It kind of challenges our notion of the kind of front of house, back of house thing. And so what we settled on proposing and then met with the neighbors to introduce was putting the pool back where it is, creating no greater nonconformity, but asking for the nonconformity of putting that swimming pool, breaking the side setback there. The house that is to the bottom of this diagram, which is to the east, supports that. All of the surrounding neighbors do, but that one would be the most affected. Their pool is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 feet from the side property line, 10, 8, 7, something very small. And so they kind of have similar mirrored circumstances. And we're joking that they would hear each other's kids play in the pool or each other play in the pool. The pool equipment, it always comes up as a subject. The pool equipment is an existing non-conforming position very close to the rear property line. And we had originally suggested, I think maybe on the drawings, it still suggests putting that in that replacement location. But after talking about it with neighbors and thinking about it a little harder, we found that we could put it underneath in the crawl space of the house, access with a crawl space door, and so that we can thoroughly muffle the noise there and get rid of the nuisance that has existed there for some time. And I think if there are no questions from the ADR right now, I'll let Eric present a few details about the landscape.
Hi, my name is Eric Blazin, a landscape architect. This is a really fun project to work on. The clients are wonderful and the site's really beautiful. And, I think what the architecture is going to do to this is amazing. So we came in and collaborated with them. And I think like what Stephen said, what is really important, the most sustainable thing that you can really do is build the new house more or less where the old house is, so you're not disturbing the whole site. So we did a lot of studies together and looking at things, and then the main thing was really, it's such an amazing oak tree, and there's a lot of other trees there that are really great, and it was really working around that and how we navigate that. And I think by redoing the garage and putting that in the front and adjusting how you enter the site, that helped us a lot too, because what that allowed us to do was not put the garage outside the setback. And that's why one of the reasons that we had to move the driveway in the position that we have it in. And the other reason that we did that too was to fit the fire hammerhead turnaround. And then this also maximizes the garden space in the front. So, in the front garden, in the front, sorry, I'm going to go back to the plan again. There. So, basically we've got right behind the garage is a rock garden, then close to the house is a little courtyard garden. Oh yeah, thanks. Is a courtyard garden with a fountain in this position. And then this is where the fire hammerhead turnaround is. And then we've got lots of space around the oak tree. And then basically the pool's more or less in the same position in this area. Instead of the pool going in this direction, we have it going in that direction. And so it made a lot of sense to keep that pool in that position as well. And then in the back, we've got a very informal walkway with crushed stone and wood ties. We have a gas fire pit here we're proposing, and then an ADU would be in the back. And like Stephen mentioned, the pool equipment now goes underneath this portion of the house. So, and then the planting, we're planting 25 trees on the site. We're planting like 10 oak trees. Most of the plantings low water. All of this, we've run calculations, and this will meet all of MMWD's requirements. Sorry, you can go to the next slide. So the new entry gates are all wood that are see-through. We've got stone columns that match the stone. There's also a pedestrian gate. We're going to have a lot of planting vegetation on the front. You can go to the next slide. And so this is some of the plant palette that we're proposing for the garden. And then for the main hedge that's going to be screening the property, we're proposing it's called Laurus nobilis, and you can get it very large on the get-go, and it grows fast and it's very dense. So that's what's going to be, in those areas. Next slide. More of the planting that we're showing. I won't get into all of that because we could be here a long time, but and then this is we work with the arborist in Purdue. They went through and looked at which trees were ill and which ones we should remove. And so this really is from Bartlett Trees arborist report, and which trees we're proposing that aren't in good shape. And we met with the neighbors at 150 and 170 and reviewed this. Next. Lighting plan. You can keep going. I think there's some elevations. There we go. So on the property, we're proposing a grape stake fence. And that's a place where we were asking for a variance on the sides. So to go 7 feet, and both neighbors seem to be on board with that. And then in the front, that would be 6 feet. And I think, and then we work with a civil engineer, and so our cut and fill, we have 450 cubic yards of cut and 315 cubic yards of fill, so our total off-haul is 135 cubic yards. So pretty good there. And then we're proposing pervious paving for the driveway. And when we did the calculations, we're under like 2,800 square feet of permeable paving. So we're doing much better than the existing site is. And so part of that whole roadway is helping that. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Can you go back one slide? There. So looking at it from here, just because it gives a good visual representation of the topography, how high is the garage? Yes. And then how high is it? The structure, and then I guess my other question regarding the garage is, at the base floor, how far below the street level is that? Because it slopes down. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you go out to the site, you could see the story poles, and it looks different because it would be cut in, and all of that's kind of built up. 16 feet tall.
We're not able to hear Stephen's responses. I think Stephen's responding. I'm sorry. We just can't hear that online. Thanks, Stephen.
Hi, Mark. Sorry. So the existing roadway at the mouth of the driveway, the current mouth of the driveway, is 4 feet above the proposed finished floor of the inside of the garage. But part of where the garage is planned is kind of a mound. You know, right now it has this a round mound, and the top of that mound is kind of akin to the roadway at 500, if that makes sense. It's 499.6. The roadway is 500. So the story poles show something that appears as if is about 4 feet submerged into the soil, or it should, you know, and so about 12 feet at the peak is what we should see with our eyes right now is coming up out of the ground.
Okay, thanks. Do any ADR members have questions about the design, house, landscaping, etc.?
I have a few. If I could jump in.
Yeah, why don't you go first,
Or
Mark?
Joey, do you want to go? Wasn't sure if you were trying to jump in there.
Me?
Yeah, I didn't. I thought you were trying to jump in.
Oh, no. You know, I
Oh, okay.
think I have to recuse myself.
Oh yeah,
That-
you do.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm listening.
Okay.
Because
sorry.
I'm interested, but I think it's a little close to my house. So sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, let me just ask a few questions. I'm not sure if it's on the landscape side or the architecture side on a few of these. You know, we used to know this house as the totem pole house. Any plans for the totem pole? I didn't see it in the drawings, but I am curious what becomes of the carved
Mark,
tree?
it's available if you should like it.
It will be. I'm guessing it will be removed from the premises.
Yep.
Okay.
Actually,
I don't have an opinion on
previous
that.
owner might be interested in receiving it. They one of their children sponsored it and might be interested in it, but it's going to be removed in the plan.
Okay, great. Yeah, I have no opinion on that. I just was curious. More of a Ross cultural land spot of some significance. Can maybe Stephen, because you're at the mic, just describe the request for the variance on the front to 6 feet and the side fences to 7. I'm not sure. I'll make a statement that given the front, you have such a relief from the building from the front. I'm just curious what the thought is that needing a 6-foot fence on the front
I
property
think
line.
that's to keep deer out.
To keep deer out. Okay.
That's
And
right.
the 7 foot on the side is similar or?
For the 7 feet. Yeah, both. Yeah, I think it was for privacy for both neighbors, and they both want it.
Okay. All right. And the grape stake fence extends, I couldn't discern how far it extends around the sides. I know it's in the front facade, you know, the front property line. Does that same design extend all the way around the property or just?
It does.
portion?
Yeah,
It does.
all
Okay.
the way, even the back.
Okay, great. So I did see a note on the drawings. I'm just going to keep asking my question. No, the drawings about the generator being in the front yard setback. I was just curious what the decision there was.
Yeah, let me flip to the site plan. It's tucked behind the garage, so kind of between the fence and the garage, basically. And the notion there is that because the lot is kind of narrow, none of the neighbors wanted it near them, and this is away from all of the neighbors. And so the idea is that we put, it's not a smog hog, it's called something else similar, some weird, it's what's a zombie box. It's the name of a silencing box that gets placed over it. So the idea is that it be hidden in, behind shrubbery, and it has this acoustical shroud over it. So we had discussed it with neighbors before submitting this and said, well, maybe it could go kind of near where the driveway terminus is, over on the side there. And that's kind of where the neighbor's house is. And so anywhere along the side didn't seem to make sense. And so the front seemed to make the most sense, Mark.
I'm sorry, Stephen, can you do the pointer to show exactly where it's going to go? I'm not sure if people on Zoom can see the pointer, but
People on Zoom can't see the board. So
I can see it. So
yeah, it's right here, which is just to the south of the south end of the garage.
and that's in the setback.
That is just within the non-buildable area of the lot. Yeah, that's in the setback zone.
Okay.
Yeah, I was sort of just curious, Stephen, why it wasn't flipped to the opposite side of the garage, just to be outside of the setback and
Yes. Well,
essentially to avoid, it being on the public right of way.
understand. I mean, the ambient noise is greatest at the street, of course, and so
Yeah.
our thinking was that it's best there, and that if we put it there on either a west-facing facade, or in this case, that north-facing facade, that it would reverberate the noise back to the neighbors and back to the subject property as well.
Yeah. Okay. A couple more questions from me. There's a very informal path that is along that side of the street on Lagunitas.
Yeah.
I couldn't discern where whether that would remain or not in relationship to where the fence would go and the associated plantings. Is the intention to leave that path? Again, it's very informal, but leave that path available.
The intention is to leave it there. Yes.
Okay. That's great. Oh, thank you. Let's see. I didn't see any indication of solar or anything along those lines. I was just curious if you had a plan on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. They just told us today that a third company told us they wouldn't sell us any panels. There's so much shade on the site that no one has said that they will do it. Now, I'm assuming you can just buy solar panels and no one will stop you from putting them on. But each company that you reach out to does a solar study, of course, with Google Earth, and they say, nope, not even on the garage could we do this. So we're struggling with that right now.
Yeah,
And the new code might require it. So even if it's a small number of panels and even if they're not productive. So I don't know if there's a provision in the code that says if they're not productive, that you shouldn't do it because it's a waste of resource.
Yeah. I can see the site, just, knowing the density of the tree canopy. I was curious if you even could get it on there, but because the roof is more appropriate in its current or in its proposed state from an angle perspective.
Yeah.
I think those are all the questions I had. Maybe just that I'm assuming that the lawn area in front is natural grass, not an artificial surface. Is that the proposal that I saw?
It is.
The Great Lawn?
What we're thinking about, sorry. It is in this proposal, and all of our water calculations came out that, it would meet MMWD requirements, but we're currently talking with them about doing a synthetic lawn. And so, which would even be better. And so that's where we're at right now.
Got it. Okay. I don't think I have any further questions.
Part of that has to do with a discussion with the arborist around doing whichever it is in part of the canopy of the large oak tree, because lawns aren't good under the canopy of the trees. There's lawn there now under part of it, but the arborist is looking for us to improve the condition of that tree. So we're looking at taking up a lot of the pavement that surrounds that tree and replacing it with stones set on pedestals that let the drainage through. And then the grass, he's really not cool with irrigation on natural grass under the canopy.
Oh, so he would prefer a synthetic lawn.
Correct.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Thank you. I don't think I have any other questions.
I have a couple of questions.
Please.
The area where the future ADU is going to be added. I was just looking at kind of the sight line from the rear neighbors at 9 Upper Ames. So it looks like where the ADU is going and trees are being removed. So I'm just wondering if Eric could talk through the trees that are being added and how much of this new house is going to be exposed and visible to the neighbors there.
Yeah, that's a good question. Melissa and AJ visited that neighbor, and then the neighbor came to their property and they looked back and forth to kind of project or pretend that was there. The finished floor, not that the ADU is part of the discussion, obviously, but we're just trying to explain.
Yeah, actually, I'm not, Rebecca, sorry, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
Rebecca, I'm not even sure we're supposed to discuss the ADU at all, and that might be going against state code, so I think we actually.
I'm not talking about the ADU. I'm talking about the sight line to the main house, like with
Oh,
the trees
okay.
that are being removed. I won't even say the word ADU.
Oh, okay,
With the
fine.
trees being removed,
Thank you.
what additional screening is going in? That's
Yeah,
all.
so many of the trees on the site remain that there really is not a strong sight line between the houses. In other words, the trees in the area of the proposed fire pit are remaining. There are ones on the far extreme north of the property are remaining. And so there really isn't a strong sight line between them, given the canopies of all the trees that do remain. I don't think anything that Eric plans to plant at that very north end, which is near the creek, would gain enough height to block a direct sight line. You know, it's pretty far up in the air. It's 30 feet up or something or more, you know. But the existing canopies of the trees are shown on the site plan are accurate and are abundant.
Okay.
So very back near the creek, we're proposing to plant ilex, which is a holly, and also I won't use the word of the structure either, but it is being sunken down in, and so I think what we're proposing would screen it. Yeah, no, that would be the existing trees would be doing that. Yeah. I don't have anything new that would, I mean, those existing trees that are there would be the one that would be helping screen the main house.
Okay. And then my other question is just with regards of the pool location, I was just wanted to know the thought process with not on a 1 acre lot, just moving it over some. Is it just to reduce the cut and fill, or because it's matching part of the existing location?
Yeah.
I'll show you what I think she's saying.
If there's a big tree there, if we moved it more towards the west, we would take out a tree. And so that's why we were holding the position there. And if we moved it the other way, it's, you know, goes more into the setback. So that's why we did what we did. And it's not a huge pool. I think it's like 20 by 30, 38 by 20.
Okay. I think
we might have lost Laura.
Sorry. Oh,
I think we lost her, but I think she was saying that was it.
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
yes, we can.
I finished. Those were just the questions I wanted to ask, so I'm done.
Okay. So now I will open it up to the public, both online and in person. If anyone has a comment or a question on the project, you can go now before I bring it back to the ADR for our recommendations. Anybody with a hand up, Rebecca?
There's no one on Zoom with their hand up.
Okay, great. I have a few comments, and I'm going to go first because I'd like to hear Mark and Laura, their thoughts on what I say. So first of all, with the synthetic lawn, I think you'll be much happier. I think it's one of the best decisions we made. One, you don't have someone mowing it and blowing it for however many hours throughout the year with the noisy and polluting gas blower and mower. And in an area like this where it gets a decent amount of shade, it'll be in much better condition and your kids will be able to play on it 365 days a year, even when it's raining and not get muddy. If you do it, you'll be happy with it. Let's see. The generator, we have a generator in the front of our yard, and if it's not in the setback, it's got to be adjacent to it. Maybe we got something where they let us put it in the setback because it wasn't more than 18 inches up or something like that. I think you can do it. I think if you dig down 18 inches, or you're allowed to dig down up to 18 inches, and if it doesn't stick over 18 inches, then you can put it in the front setback. There's some rule like that, and I forget what it is, or at least that used to be the rule. And if that is the rule for yours, fine. Ours, it's quite noisy. We don't have this cover that you speak of, which I think would be helpful, but like you can hear it even inside our house. And we bought it for back then the winter storms where the power might be interrupted for 3 to 5 hours. And we thought, well, who cares if it's noisy because it's in the middle of the winter, there's a rainstorm, no one's going to notice. But now the outages are often 3 to 5 days, and it's in the summer when you want to be outside. So I think it's great that you're going to put some type of cover on it, and you should really think about that because you will hear it. And I don't think it's going to make a big difference to the street if it's 3 feet on one side of your garage or adjacent to your garage. It would make a difference if it was on the inside of your garage towards your house for the street, but not for your home. I'm not really concerned either way, but if it is in the setback, I think you really should put it in that box that you're talking about that we should probably have too, because it's noisy. And maybe they're quieter now, but ours was a relatively quiet version. I think it's fine that the pool is in the setback because you are reducing the amount that is in violation of the building envelope. And I do agree that, moving it the 10 feet in would be somewhat nicer, but if you have to lose a tree and the neighbors are okay with it, I think the neighbors would rather have the nice tree, and you would rather have the nice tree than have the pool be 10 feet over, which probably wouldn't make a big difference in this particular case. My one concern on the project, and this is where I'd like to hear Mark and Laura chime in on this, is the height of the garage. And my recollection, and I don't have the town building design code in front of me, is that secondary structures should not be the prominent structure that you see from the street. And it seems in this case, it's hard to imagine that it wouldn't be the primary structure you see. And 16 feet is pretty tall for a garage. You can have a very nice garage that's, 12 feet. It's nice that it's sunken in. So I'd like to hear their opinions on this, because I think if you're going to have it there, which does make it the primary structure that I think everyone will see as they go by the property, it should either be somewhere else or significantly shorter, so it isn't as prominent when you're going by the street. You've got the lovely front of your gate and your stone pillars there, but I think seeing the side of a 16-foot garage might be unusual. And I do seem to recall town council had a big problem with a front garage on the other side of Lagunitas, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. I don't recall the property. I was not at the ADR at those meetings that were dealt with. So those are my comments on the project. Mark or Laura, who would like to go next?
I can go ahead.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, so I think when I initially looked at the scan through the drawings, I didn't understand why on a 1 acre lot, the pool was in a setback. And then I took a second glance and saw it was because of the existing pool. And then when I was at site today, I peeked over to the neighbor at 140, I think, is it 140, the south neighbor. And I saw that they have a pool right there. So due to those things, I could see it being approved, given a variance. And I mean, in general, I like the style of the house. I like the material selection. It follows the natural topography. I think it was a nice move with those planters kind of slowly stepping down at the rear side to make the massing look a little bit reduced, to break it up some. And also appreciate that pool equipment was moved from that back corner and put into the crawl space. I think that was a good call. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I guess my question earlier was just about the screening between the main house and the rear neighbors. And then I think that was everything. I understand the need for the the taller fences with the deer issues. I also have those. I think artificial turf makes sense. I have real grass and I have a mole problem that I just keep endlessly battling. So fake grass is a good idea. And then I think, yeah, the one question mark is just the garage close to the main street, which is such a common path, running, walking path for the town. Does it need to be that tall, that close to the street? And because, you know, realistically, it's not probably going to have cars in it. It's going to be used for something else. So, yeah, I guess I would also question the height. And I think that was all the notes that I had. So, thank you.
Mark?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just go through the different elements of the home. I do appreciate the massing of the home. I appreciate its location with respect to the current topography, the current home, and the desire to keep some of these oak trees. So I think that's I think the layout, the mass from the front, I appreciate, even though it might be tall and a bit taller than the current structure. I think at 29 feet. I think the form that the building takes reduces that mass. Certainly its distance from the street reduces that mass. So I'll give kudos for that. I do like the, you know, sort of the pulled out elements and the different materials. So in regards to the material palette, I think it's pretty successful. I like the stone, the treatment of the stone, and the differentiation between the other masses with the painted wood and copper. So I think the materials are really quite respectful of the design guidelines and the site in general. And I think it's more or less going to kind of disappear, especially with some of the landscaping you're putting in place. So I like the detailing. I like some of the lintels that you've got in there to highlight some of the elements of the design. The one piece that kind of struck me, and this is really a personal opinion, I thought the front entry was a little diminutive in relationship to the overall home. It you know, kind of goes away, and maybe that's part of the character and part of the charm. But I could also see you taking some subtle moves to make that a little more recognizable as an element of the home that you would want to approach. Just a small detail, I think that might use a little work. In respects to the garage, or with respects to the garage, I hear Mark and Laura's comments, especially take into consideration Mark's comments about our design guidelines and having the primary residence or primary building be either residence versus an accessory building. I actually think how the story poles depicted on site, which is accurate, it works. Because it's suppressed in the landscape, it comes down 4 feet from where you are at that road height. I think it appears like a 12-foot building, even though it's a 16-foot building. So measured, you know, ground to peak at the garage, it appears 16 feet, but because it's set back the 25 feet and down 4 feet, I think it kind of works in relationship to the scale. So that's an opinion. I agree with Mark's point. It isn't the thing you want to see, but I think I can't find a spot. Yes, you could move it 5 feet back, 10 feet back. I don't think that's going to substantively change the perception of whether or not you're seeing the home or the garage from the street. So I don't have a real problem with it. I also want to recognize that even though the property line, it's 25 feet back from the property line, the actual pedestrian experience is even further than that, right? So if you're walking by that on that side, you're another 10 feet out. So when I saw the story poles, it didn't jump out at me as excessive. I actually thought the garage was relatively narrow. To be honest, in the profile of the garage on the garage door side, it's a very narrow building. I almost expected it to be a couple feet wider. Just in proportion, I thought the building was a little too narrow in comparison to its height. I think when I think about the pool, Yeah, I struggle with having it go in the setbacks. I understand the purpose. I understand that oak tree that's to the west of the pool and the pool deck. But the reality is that pool could probably rotate 90 degrees, be almost completely within the setback, and not particularly impact the overall design of your project. On a lot this large, I think the guidance is there's really no need for a variance to have a pool in a setback. I understand that the other side has a pool that's closely adjacent and they could have pool parties and throw things over the fence, 7-foot high fence. But I see no real reason why that couldn't be rotated 90 degrees and tuck right back in that setback corner. It may require you to adjust the way that building meets the sort of understory. I'm not going to call it a basement, but that lowest story. You may need to adjust the design to respond to that. But I think it's completely doable. So I don't see any extenuating circumstances. That tree is not really what is driving it to be in that location 100%. So that would be my comment there. I don't see supporting that in the side yard setback from a ground up new construction building. I guess I could support a 7-foot high fence all the way around the sides. I don't know if that's really a necessity. You're not dealing with a flood zone home that's raised up. So, I guess it's fine. I don't really, we have the 6-foot code for a reason, I guess. I'm not sure that I see the necessity for 7 feet. And equally along the roadway, one of the things that we like to think about within Ross is the transparency between streetscape and dwellings and properties. And because the home is so far removed from the front property line, I don't really see the need to have a 6-foot fence on that streetscape. I think it's not for privacy. For deer, maybe there's another way you can solve that puzzle by not a solid fence at 6 foot high that provides a little more transparency from that streetscape as you're driving by. It's quite a frontage, right? That's probably, I don't know, it's 100 feet long, maybe 110 feet long of a fence. So I think that's a little excessive on the front facade, the front street frontage. I agree. I would rather see an artificial lawn there just because while our current MMWD water requirements are as they are today, I think we all see the writing on the wall that in the future we should take every opportunity to reduce that water load on our system. So I'd rather see that be something other than a grass lawn that needs to be maintained. With the comments that Mark made and that Laura made. I think that covers, give me a second here. Yeah, my last comment would be, I would say get the generator out of the front yard setback. Again, I don't see a need to burden the public with a loud generator if that's the desire that the homeowner wants to have, even if you put it in a box. If it's such a great box, then put it on your property out of the setback. I would say move it to the south side of the garage or move it just out of the setback in general. There's no need to have a variance for that, in my opinion. The garage can move back 4 feet, and if the generator isn't, if you need to have it on the south side. So that would be my opinion on that as well. I think those are all my comments.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so Rebecca, there were several issues here, and just to sum up the recommendation, it sounds like, and Mark and Laura, please listen carefully because I'm going to sort of sum these up and then have that be our recommendation, but let me know if I'm misstating anything. It sounds like, and I do agree with Mark on the fence, that I think that 6 feet high is fine in front, that many people have that, but it should be a mostly transparent one. Many people do the wooden, like we did the wooden posts with the metal thing in front, and I do think that is a more welcoming look. So 2 of the 3, and maybe 3 of the 3, if Laura agrees with that, 6 foot being fine because of the deer, but maybe more transparent. And Two of the three think the pool is fine where it is. One of the three thinks on a new project like this, it should be completely out of the setbacks. For the garage, two felt it should be, everyone was okay with the location. Two felt it should be shorter, and one was fine with the current height. As far as a generator goes, I sort of agree with Mark that if possible, unless it can get along with the town code by being, sunk the 18 inches, that it should be out of the setback and just somewhere adjacent to the garage or wherever you think is best for the homeowner. But everyone agrees that the house is very nice and the project should go forward with those small changes. Am I misstating anything, Laura and Mark, or should I?
No, I think that sounds right, and I will third the generator comment. I agree with what you said. So
And Mark, I think you could add there's a strong preference for an artificial lawn or a suggestion. I think Laura mentioned that, and I think you mentioned
There
that
was
as
a
well.
recommendation for that.
Yeah,
but
it's just a recommendation,
I
I
don't
think.
know if that's our place to recommend. I don't think that's our place to recommend what kind of lawn they have, but we do recommend it, but.
Yeah, it's
I
a
don't know
it's
that
a
we're
recommendation
relying
to
on
staff.
Duly noted.
That might just be us as people as opposed to ADR members. If you want, come over, look at my fake lawn. They're pretty nice, and mine's 10 years old. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time, and we can now move on to the next item. We have no conceptual advisory design review. Is there any information or discussion or new agenda items, Rebecca?
I do not have anything. Thank you.
Okay, well, in that case, we can adjourn the meeting if someone seconds it.
I can
I'll
second
second
that.
it.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Happy
everybody.
holidays.
Yeah, see you in the new year. No, maybe, yeah.